Welcome to Standing on the Edge. This is your host, Randy Saplata, and today is Friday, February 25th. Today, we'll be talking about war. What is it good for? On the edge of the coin. We also have the topic of take the money and run during Think Like the Rich. And today's personal story will be think for God's sake and then act. Finally, we'll finish up the show, as always, with what would happen if. By the way, if you like the content presented here and in other videos of mine, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up or the like button, and then subscribe to the channel to ensure that Facebook and YouTube will keep me around for a while. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for the edge of the coin. And welcome back to the show. The Edge of the Coin is brought to you by DJR Enterprises. I apologize, not DJR, the CS Media Group. CS Media Group, we provide the outstanding talent and you get the extraordinary entertainment. The Edge of the Coin is a segment that shows us a way of opening up our mindsets to allow us to explore both sides of any situation. We're going to jump right into today's topic, which is war. What is it good for? Now, give me a second here. I got to adjust one of these computer screens. That's a little better. Try to get some of that camera out of the way. War. What is it good for? Now, of course, anybody can go ahead and think that, war is just not good for anything, for any reason whatsoever. But it's always good for business. It truly is. It's always good for business. And I hate to sound callous because that's just the plain honest truth. I mean, anytime you have a war going on somewhere, somehow, there's going to be a business to profit from it. It might be the business of medical supplies because each side is going to need help healing afterwards or during the process as well. It might be the arms supplies. It might be the food and the material to go ahead and help support the advance or help support the defense of whatever happens to be. It might be just the fact that people need money, and so you can go ahead and lend to those things at exorbitant interest rates at some point. Hopefully not, but that might be the case also. There's any number of things that it can be good for, so to speak, even though war itself, personally, like I think, is just pretty much obsolete. But unfortunately, and not in my opinion, you only need one person to start a war. Only one. Now, why am I talking about war today on a small business show? Well, because first and foremost, I have to say that I was incorrect. Today is February 25th, and yesterday we found that President Putin had an incursion into Ukraine from the country of Belarus, where he had some of his Russian troops moved into several weeks in the past. In doing so, now, do I believe he's there for a takeover? No. My initial assessment stance, there is very little when you boil it down to the basic fact to make me believe that he's there to take over the country. It's very unlikely. Here's the biggest reason why. I mean, first of all, Russia's got a massive army. They've got a pretty massive navy. They've got all kinds of tanks. They got all kinds of airplanes, good, bad, and otherwise. They got all kinds of missiles. They got all kinds of stuff that they can go ahead and use to take over a country the size of Texas. The whole size of Texas compared to Russia, which spans 1.5 continents. in its country size. Russia also has a basically unlimited supply of money that they can go ahead and use. And for those of you that are thinking right now, well, we've already stopped that because we cut them off from the banking system and so on. That's a very arrogant way of thinking. Okay, Russia has for the last basically 8 or 9 years, and probably even a lot more since the 1940s or so, they have been slowly building up their gold reserves to where they can get independent of anybody else and put themselves in a place where they could be almost at the top, if not at the top economically at one point. And even if it wasn't that way, at least there would be no reason that they couldn't do whatever they wanted and nobody else could stop them by placing sanctions on their banking system. Okay, the sanctions that I'm talking about right now are good if they use the US dollar. But for the last 8 years especially, they have been getting to the point where they don't use the dollar, period. They're going around the US dollar to go into other countries and dealing with them directly into those countries' currencies or through the ruble. They are leaving the dollar out of it. So for the United States and NATO and so on and so forth to go ahead and say, well, we're slapping the harshest penalties on them by sanctioning them. They're not going to be able to get access to their money. That's just plain BS. I'm sorry, plain BS, because they've set themselves up to a point right now where they don't need the US dollar. They're coming out and doing things, showing the world, and this is my opinion, but it's strongly becoming a fact. They're showing the world that they can do what they want, and it doesn't matter if the US dollar is sanctioned from their banks. It doesn't matter. They can do what they want. That's the first point. Second point is that the amount of people that have been sent into the Ukraine is a token of what needs to be done in order to go ahead and do any kind of takeover, peaceful or otherwise. Just a token. I mean, think of it this way, okay? If you were watching the news like I was yesterday, and you saw the Russian tanks and the Russian buses and the Russian people coming across the border into Ukraine, and it was very weird because for 15, for 20, for 35 minutes that I was watching this, the same scene, or the same camera, I should say, was being played, and you saw all kinds of cars going out of Ukraine. But the same bus, the same tanks, the same armored vehicles stopped, parked in that picture right there at the border. Then you had all news agencies saying, well, Russia bombed Ukraine. They've sent all kinds of artillery and all kinds of missiles and all kinds of other things into Ukraine, and it's full out war, and we're condemning them to the highest level. But if you took a look at the actual footage, the one place that had any kind of explosion was the Ukrainian airport in Kiev. And yes, I pronounce it Kiev like the Ukrainians do, rather than Kyiv as everybody else seems to be doing these days. And I don't understand why. Anyway, that's a nitpicky thing. But the only explosions seem to be at the airport, period. The casualties up to that point, and it stayed the same for roughly about 2 or 3 hours, it didn't change one way or another, were less than 100. Not hundreds of thousands, not tens of thousands, not thousands, but less than 100 people were injured. The death toll was, I want to say, something like in the teens. It was at that point. Of course, it may have changed. I have not checked the news since then. But if I'm relating it to the corona mess that was going on a couple of years ago, the same thing seemed to happen. The press seemed to be getting all worked up, literally working themselves into a frenzy for a tiny, tiny, minuscule thing comparatively. So that's the second point, is that what's being blown out of proportion does not seem to be in keeping with the facts. Thirdly, and this is really where I think he's trying to go ahead and set himself up with, and there are a couple of people on the radio that I was listening to last night that were saying the same thing, and I really seriously have been believing this for a while. President Putin is not doing this on a whim. He's not doing this on a whim. He is doing this on purpose, and I believe that he's doing this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I believe that he's actually working with other people to try to help usher in something else. If Russia was going to actually go ahead and invade Ukraine, they were going to do it in force. Now, force means more than a one-on-one advantage. And even after yesterday, sending all those troops in, there were still less than 100,000 troops going into the border. Well, when you have a country that has over 6 million people and their own standing armies are 200,000 people and growing, if you include their militias and their civilian helping partners, why would Russia tell somebody to go in with only 100,000 troops at a disadvantage? No, I think the reason that he did it was, number one, to first off to take away, to distract other things that are going on. Okay. Kind of like this virus mess that was going on a couple of years ago. I think it was a huge distraction. I think the distraction is that the world is really seriously trying to go ahead and get themselves set up for the digital coin, which everything is supposed to be turned over for in January in 2023. And yes, it is coming. It is less than 8 months away. It is actually closer to 7 months away. And I think that's the first one. The second one, I think, is because President Biden, and this is my opinion, completely my opinion, but I think President Biden actually asked President Putin to do something to help him boost his polls. I truly do. I think he went ahead in collusion with President Putin and asked him to do something. And we, as a nation, would do nothing. We would go ahead and talk to whatever, we'd go ahead and put up a big bluster. We put up a good show and whatnot, something like that. I think that's the second thing. The third thing is, I believe, again, it's distracting everybody because it is good for business. And this business right now is the government, okay? It's good for the government. Why? Because if we are, as a nation, are sending over help monetary-wise from the banks, if we're sending out help by putting in troops and we're putting in material and we're putting in supplies and we're putting in medical forces and so on and so forth to help everybody out, the government gets taxed. The government taxes all of these industries. They get more money supplied, bam, 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 thank you, ma'am, and it comes out filling their coffers immediately. And let's face it, the government's in desperate need of money. The United States government is in desperate need of money. They have not made a profit at all in the last 25 years, right in that area. And the only reason they made a profit back then was because there was a segment of money that was moved from one area of being held in savings over to another area of the budget, and therefore things were balanced. We didn't have to worry about a thing. Oh, how nice. We got things, and our polls are going up. And yes, we got everything taken care of. And people are losing their savings because of it. Plain and simple. So yes, I think that's a distraction for that also, is that it's distracting people from what's really going on. The last thing is because inflation is coming in force, and because of these other things, they want it to go in force, wham, to go ahead and knock out the people that are, quote unquote, still what they believe are in power, which I don't necessarily think is true, but that would be the Central Reserve. They want to go ahead and get the Central Reserve people in a way where they can be pinned under somebody else's thumb and therefore don't have the necessary what's the word I'm looking for? Leverage, so to speak, to go ahead and say, well, we can do this, but it's going to cost you because we're the only ones that can do this. And I think really they're going to go ahead and boost the central banks out of the picture sometime in the next 6 to 8 months. And this is the first stepping stone to it. Finally, I think the biggest reason that President Putin is doing it is because he wants to show the rest of the world that he can do whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants. He is in that position. And all the sanctions in the world are not going to hurt him. All the sanctions in the world are not going to hurt his country. All the sanctions in the world are really not going to hurt his people all that much. They won't. Why? Because like I mentioned before, he's already been in the process of switching these things over for the last 8 years. He's got ties to China right now that are seriously allowing him to go ahead and go basically almost anywhere in the world legally. And the people that don't want Russia around are still tied to them economically because they depend on the gas, they depend on the oil, they depend on all the other supplies that are coming in that Russia has in force. And Russia can do it plain and simply and very easily anyway. It's not hurting Russia at all. Russia's coming out of force right now. The only way that Russia's going to go ahead and stop doing what they're doing is if they are actually taken to a point where they can be hurt economically. And this is not the way to do it. Right now, it's hurting everybody else. It's going to hurt the NATO nations. It's going to hurt the United States. It's going to hurt, all the other people that are dependent on certain things as well that only Russia can supply easily. So war, what is it good for? It's great for business. And we're going to go ahead and get more into that in just a minute on the next segment by talking about how you can actually go ahead and focus on this in your business to go ahead and make it easier for yourself. But the big thing I want you to remember is this, that no matter where in the world the war is, you can still take advantage of a crisis and make good for it. If nothing else, by taking all of your unused supply that you had sitting in your back room for a while and labeling it war sale, get your goods right now and use them for whatever it happens to be. Make up something easy. If you lose a say 30% profit on it, just remember you were going to mark it down anyway because it's been sitting in your back room and you've got to make room for the new stuff anyway. Definitely something to remember. You've been listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to think like the rich. And welcome back to the show. Think Like the Rich is brought to you by Mama's Decadence, offering luxurious, I love that word, luxurious refreshments for your body inside and out. You need to treat your body and that of your lover to a bit of luxury from Mama's. You can find out what's available by emailing Heather at mamasdecadence@gmail.com. Think Like the Rich is a segment designed to help everyone think past their circumstances and encourage a different course of action. Today's topic is take the money and run, for God's sake. Take the money and run. Now, I've used this same topic before for other segments, other areas in the past year or two or whatever, something like that. But right now, we're going to go ahead and pertain it to war. We're going to pertain it to your business. We're going to pertain it to anything that you possibly can right now because you need to be creative in what to do. You've got to be creative in where you're going to go because let's face it, right now, if everything again comes to a standstill, comes to a screeching halt, if everything again is forced to where we can't get money out of our banks, if everything is once again put it to the point where our supplies are trickling to a standstill and you can't get them into the stores, who loses? Everybody. Everybody. The business people can't make a profit because they can't get their stuff moved. The truckers can't make a profit or a paycheck because they have nothing to move around because they either can't get it out or they can't get it in, one or the other. The stores can't make a profit because if they don't have it, they can't sell it. And finally, the people can't use it because they don't have it. And everybody has lost. And then, God forbid, worst and most is that the government loses because they can't tax what's not purchased. They can't tax what's not purchased. Plain and simple. So, how do you fix this? How do you take care of this? Well, you take the money and you run, okay? This is going to be a fabulous time. A fabulous time. And it is going to be the biggest shift in money in world history, in my opinion. And a lot of millionaires and billionaires think the exact same thing, okay? If you do what I'm telling you right now, you can ride that wave, even if it's just a little gentle wave rather than the tsunami that's coming before you hit it, and you set yourself up in a better position, okay? You need to do basically the next few things. First and foremost, get yourself a damn side hustle. Do something. Make yourself valuable to somebody else that's going to create an income for you quickly, easily, and is easily movable. It is movable. It is transferable. Figure out a way that you can do it. If you're a chef, get yourself into a mobile platform and start hammering the streets as you can. If you need to, you can go ahead and do it around your neighborhoods. Just circle the place for a couple of hours. Do 6 neighborhoods around for 2 hours. Right around lunchtime, boom, you're all set for the day, and you move on from there. And you can go ahead and limit what you got to that small amount because that's all you can fit in your truck. Okay, if you got several trucks, even better. That's perfectly fine as well. The same thing pertains to pharmaceuticals. Right now, pharmaceuticals are doing all right. All of your pharmacies are doing halfway decently because they're open. But what happens if they shut themselves down? People still need the supplies. People still need whatever's necessary. If you got things that can be replaceable for pharmaceuticals, use them, okay? What am I talking about? I'm talking about getting creative right now because people are always going to have cuts. They're always going to have lacerations. They're always going to have broken ankles. They're always going to have something that's going to be dire, and they can't get into medical emergency immediately, okay? So what do? Well, if you happen to have a wooded lot, what you can go ahead and start doing is taking the wood that's outside that you've got, especially if it's thicker, split it up into smaller pieces, sand it down. You make splints for the people that are nearby. If you've got a bunch of rope, go ahead and cut them up into cords that you can go ahead and tie around your weights around the ankles to be able to make the splints. That's just one example, okay? Duct tape is fabulous. Having t-shirts around that you're not using, that you've never used, to be even better because they're nice and clean, but they can be used for bandaging if you don't have bandages. If you got a ton of Band-Aids left over from years past, get out and sell them. Do whatever you need to go ahead and do. Gauze bandages the same way. Toilet paper, for God's sake, that's going to be a big help as well. And clean water. Clean water is the biggest thing that you can do. So if you don't have a filtration system, figure out how to do it, how to make it. It doesn't take much. Basically, it's charcoal, the proper type of charcoal, not just the lighter charcoal that you would use in your grill. So you need to go ahead and make sure you got the right type for that. But it uses that, it uses ash, it uses sand, and it uses whatever water you can find. It doesn't matter where the water is. And some people go ahead and put in stones as well to try to help filter that through. And a couple, probably around 3 at the max, 5-gallon buckets. And then if you set them up on different levels to where gravity works its way down, then it's going to go ahead and make it even easier for you at the end of the day. Within an hour, 1 hour, you will be able to have cleaner drinkable water, to go ahead and use for whatever's necessary. And if you decide you want to go ahead and do it even further and recycle that water that you did to make it cleaner again, at the end of 2 hours, you're going to have basically the purest water that you can go ahead and find. It's gone ahead and filtered out everything that you could possibly think of in that really is going to be harmful to you. And this is what the charcoal filters do that are in those life-saving straws that you got, and the pure water filters that are going on. This is a great way to go ahead and do this. So if for God forbid, for whatever reason, the water company decides to shut its place down, and you no longer have the pressure to go ahead and get the water, or the electricity goes down and the pressure can't be built up or be more than a trickle to go ahead and do so, then you don't have to sit there and try to boil this water until it's completely tasteless to be able to do what's necessary and clean enough to be able to do it. No, you've already got stuff that's already being taken care of from you, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. It doesn't. But you need to get yourself into position now to be able to go ahead and do this. So either way, take the money and run. Put it into a side hustle. Put it into a small business. Put it into supplies that can be used for you, that you can then either barter and trade it for something else that's useful for you, or put yourself in a position where people are coming to you because you have what they need. Now, at the same time, you need to set it up in a way where you will not get robbed. You will not get robbed, because people are always looking to take advantage of something else that they don't have that they know you do. And so they're going to go ahead and try to rob you. If that's the case, there are several different ways to do that, and you don't necessarily even need firearms to do it. For this, I'm sure the people that are out there advocating the taking away of all firearms are going to be very happy to hear this. Okay, I'm not talking about taking away firearms. If you got firearms, great. Use them if you need to. Defend yourself for sure. Okay, I am all for that. I am all for the Second Amendment rights, even though I personally do not own a fire gun. I have a couple of BB guns. I've got some bows and arrows. I've got weapons, definitely. But I do not have an actual fire gun. I don't have a handgun. I don't have a pistol. I don't have an AR-15. Nothing of that nature. Okay, I don't do it. That's because I am not comfortable with using them. Therefore, I just don't fool with them. But if you got them, use them if you need to, for sure. But what's even better than that is setting yourself up good defenses so that people can't get to what you need to do. First and foremost, take those things that you've just been using and put them in a place where nobody else can find them. So let's say, for example, you've got your mobile food system, okay? If somebody tries to go ahead and rob you of the food and you've already used up most of your food, well, okay, let them take what you got. But there's nothing there. You're not harmed by that much, because most of your food is out of the truck somewhere else where you can easily put it in place and go back again and get more for the next day and use another area to go ahead and set yourself up in. That's one great way to do it. You separate the majority of what you got from what you are using. Okay. And that goes back to a great line of the entertainment industry, which is always leave them wanting more. Always leaving them wanting more. Never, ever, 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 if you can help it, have more to sell than the people around you, because then it's going to go to waste. Okay. If you sell out, oh, wow. Well, people are going to go, are you going to be back? Are you going to be back? How can I find you? You leave them wanting more. All right. This is a fantastic thing to remember. So that's the second thing. If you go ahead that's the thing. If you separate the majority of what you've got from what you have, you're going to set yourself up better. Secondly, if you are defending yourself in any way, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people are essential. essential. You have to have more than one person to help you out in your defense. Why? Because if the people that are trying to rob you, if the people that are trying to get what you've got, if the people that are wanting what it is that you have to offer them and are profiting from their circumstance or the circumstance that everybody's going through, then when they realize that you're the only one that's doing this, then it puts you as an easy target. It puts you as an easy target. So I want you to remember that. If you are with somebody else that can keep an eye on what's going on around you as well as helping you at the same time, if you have a third person that can do the same thing and a fourth person that can do the same thing, it makes you much less presentable and palatable for a target, because it's now no longer one target, it's two targets, three targets, four targets that they have to go through in order to get what they want. Four targets is a lot more difficult to take care of than one. It's a lot easier to hit a bullseye once than it is to hit it four times. A lot easier to hit a bullseye once than it is to hit it twice or three times. It's a lot easier to wound one person and get them out of the way than it is to wound four people and move them, because you might or might not be able to get it in a way where other people aren't trying to go ahead and come and get you. And of course, you got the people that are blessed by your processes and want to come and help defend you, and they're going to come running the moment they see somebody trying to steal the stuff. Why? Because 90% of the people are actually, believe it or not, honest and decent. You're going to find 5% of the people that are 100% willing to be completely honest, and they will be wham right there with you because they want you to keep what you've got so that you can help everybody else. You've got 5% of the people out there that are completely dishonest and could care less one way or another. You've got what they want. They're going to go ahead and take it. And the other 90% of the people are out there going, hell, I could go either way, but if it's helping me, I want to help you, and I'm willing to go ahead and go back and forth, quid pro quo. This is a very important thing. So you take the money and you run with it. You take the money and you go ahead and do these things that I'm talking about, and it's going to make you and put you in a much better situation than you would have been in the first place. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for Tales from the Edge. Welcome back to the show. Tales from the Edge is brought to you by the HRS Foundation, investing in future generations to ensure a better tomorrow. Tales from the Edge is a personal example of people and situations that I've experienced during my path to growing wealthy. Today's story is about think, for God's sake, and then act. Think and then act. Now, this is going to go ahead and tie into take the money and run too, because you can easily see and apply all the principles that I'm going to be talking about here. But it also applies to what's been happening in Ukraine and what was going on with the mask situations and what was going on with this COVID nonsense, as I call it, and what's been going on with the banks trying to go ahead and keep control of everything, and what's been going on with taxes, what's been going on for hundreds of years, basically, and thousands of years, even for that matter, because there's always been some sort of hegemony going on. That's a nice little word that I was reminded of last night. And that's where basically you have one person wanting to rule the world. You have one country wanting to take care of everything. You've got one person that controls so much that is dominating everything happening all over the place. I mean, let's think about it, okay? Back in the day, you had Spain. Let's go back to the 1400s. Okay, Spain was the first really big one, but even more. Let's go way back. Okay, BC. You had Greece. Greece taking over Macedonia, Macedonia taking care of the Middle East area, so on and so forth as well, and even parts up into Russia, going up into the Urals. From there, Macedonia fell to Greece. Greece went ahead and had a fantastic, completely wonderful time where they controlled the known world and they brought peace in, and they went ahead and took care of that. Egypt was being taken care of, and they were going back and forth and so on and so forth. And then you had Istanbul coming in as well with Troy, and they were all going back and forth with each other right there. And pretty much from that point, they kind of lost out because the Romans swept in and took care of everything. The Romans basically went ahead and had the hegemony for the known world. They brought in the biggest thing that anybody had ever thought of, which was the Roman road. They brought in the highway system, for Pete's sake. They brought in aqueducts after that, which allowed them to go ahead and take care of all kinds of transporting stuff to be moved in and out, and people to go ahead and be supplied with water, which was the biggest thing right there. Every single place that they went to, the aqueduct system was an immense engineering effect that was brought, that actually I think was stolen from, or improved upon, I should say, from the Babylonians way back in the day. But they utilized it to massive effect. The Romans went ahead and lost out. Basically, then at that point, they kind of broke up. They lost out to the Germans. They lost out to the Spaniards. They lost out to the French. They lost out to the English. Boom, it all got separated up into all kinds of things. Spaniards came up on the scenes back in the 1400s, really big in the day, and they went ahead and ruled the seas for 300 years with their massive navies. Maybe not 300 years, for maybe 200 years or so. But either way, it was a very long time. The British came along, boom, wiped them out with their smaller corvettes and their corsairs that they had, rather than the big old armada warships that were going on. They literally wiped it out because they were much smaller, they were much faster, and they were much more easily controlled and had better weapons at the same time. Wiped them out. England took over the hegemony. They went ahead and literally took massive control of the whole world. I mean, they took control of Europe. They took control of parts of Russia. They took control of Africa. They took control of most of Asia. I mean, they literally had control of everything. And then for a very, very short period of time, they had control of the Americas also. And then all of a sudden, America came online and said, no, forget it. We're breaking away from you. England still had control of pretty much the seas, making sure everything was calm and order. And there was a maritime law going on that they set up. And then back in the right around beginning of World War I, or end of World War I, beginning of World War II, that shuttle passed to us here in the States. And the United States took over that as well. They took over the control of that definitely in World War II. And the United States has had the hegemony of the world since then. And they literally have consolidated everything under their control, or as much as possible. Now, of course, there were still some breakaway areas that were not able to be controlled, such as this very small portion of the Middle East. You had Russia, you had China, both of which had, until 2008, still had a lot of dictation that they had to work with for the United States and their banking system. Now it has fractured again, and we are literally on the edge of the coin. We're looking over the edge of the cliff. We're looking over into what will be next, and nobody knows yet where we are headed. We don't know if Russia and China are going to come on strong and they're going to go ahead and take power away. We don't know if Europe is going to go ahead and come massively onto the scene and take power away from everything else and whatever. We don't know if, God forbid, that there is an alien race that's going to come down and try to go ahead and take over the human race. We just don't know. And it makes it scary. It makes it very scary for people to do anything. So what do? They act out of fear. They act out of fear. I am no different than anybody else when it comes to this. Because, I mean, I even caught myself yesterday telling my wife, with all this stuff going on, it really might make sense just to go ahead and either, stop our search for a house and just go out and buy a mobile home and just take off and start doing our businesses from there. Yeah, I thought about that. That was one of the first things that came to my mind. And I had to think about it. Okay, wait a second. wait a second, think. Think, Randy. Don't just act on impulse. Number one, can you utilize this mobile home, whatever it might be, to your advantage? Or is it just because you're scared and want to go ahead and get the hell out of Dodge? Secondly, can you actually go ahead and afford it right now, or would it be better to find a piece of property that very soon is going to go ahead and have a fire sale because nobody wants it, nobody can afford it, so on and so forth, and people are going to start dropping prices left, right, and center. And yes, I believe that is coming very soon as well. It should happen, in my opinion. It should have already happened, in my opinion, but it should definitely be happening sometime this year. And finally, what are you going to do with it? If you get it wherever you at, are you going to hide in a hole, or are you going to be able to go ahead and move out into other places and work in, like I said, to your benefit in doing so? Think, slow down, take a deep breath, find out what the actual facts are, and then act. Now, of course, there are always concessions to that statement. There's always circumstances that you need to foresee, okay? If you were at that airport in Kiev and you had artillery coming in and you heard it coming in, forget the think, it's run, get under cover, do something to try to get away from the explosions. Yes, then I understand acting first and then thinking. But for everybody else outside of the situations, don't let your emotions control you. Because, again, as I said, things are not always as they appear. And there is a staging system right now where people want the massive amount of people to be emotional, because if they're emotional, they will not think. If they're emotional, they can be herded easily into smaller areas. They can be herded easily into giving up their rights. They can be herded easily into turning over even more money. They can be herded easily into other things, such as take these things right now, do this with it, give us control. They are very easily willing to go ahead and give up what little control they got left. But if we stop and think and then realize just who is doing the manipulating, and there's always a manipulator, always, and it's almost never, let me repeat that, it's almost never the obvious person. If you think about that and then you realize what's going on, then you're going to see a huge different outcome. And this is how the rich make their wealth. Excuse me. The first thing they do is they look at everything. Pardon me. They look at everything. They look at all of the circumstances. They look at both sides of the coin because they're standing on the edge of the coin. That's why I love using my show name, Edge of the Coin, or excuse me, the Edge of the Coin, as part of one of the segments of my show. And I love using the song Pick Up the Pieces as my show theme because it literally is doing exactly that. They wait for everything to fall apart, and then they walk about going, oh, I like this. This is the best of that. Oh, this is even better. I like the best of that. And I like this one here. And they pick it up for literally nothing and move on. Now, they're going to say, this is great common sense. And other people are going, well, that's just a hell of a way to act. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be generous. But think of it this way, too, on the opposite side of that coin. The people that had things fall apart on them showed, for the most part, that they couldn't control what it was that they had. Or, even worse, they didn't know what they had and could not make good use of it, period. for the rich to come in and say, we're going to go ahead and buy things on sale, which is exactly what it is. And then we're going to go ahead and turn around and resell it to people that can use it and know how to use it and are able to go ahead and make a better profit off of it by doing exactly the same thing. This is good business, acceptable practices. If they happen to make a profit from it, most of the time we shouldn't begrudge that. We should be trying to do the exact same thing, and therefore can put ourselves in a position to where eventually we will be the rich people that are scooping up things at fire sale prices and able to go ahead and do the exact same thing. This is how economies grow 100% of the time. This is how economies grow. It's not because money was flooded into the areas. It's not because there was material just dumped on people. 100% of the time, when those things happen, when those things happen, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 people, 5 events, 5 businesses, whatever you want to go ahead and call it, 5 organizations, we'll put it that way, that will scoop up about probably around 85% of that. And they will do that and use it for the most part decently. Not wisely, but decently. Then you got the other 15% of the process and the whatever, and everybody else that comes in, and they're trying to go ahead and either steal what's left, or they're trying to go ahead and scalp what's left. This is not a good thing. And these are the people that make big business into a bad name. Okay. And yes, there's always 100% of the time certain people in those big businesses that will do exactly the same thing that I just mentioned. They're going to go ahead and try to scoop up what's left, and they're going to go ahead and try to embezzle what the businesses have to be able to use them and to their own best resources, and they're going to go ahead and do things. It's not always the CEO. It's not always one of the chief officers. Sometimes it's a lowly janitor that's doing the exact same thing. There's always going to be people out there. So you have to remember that there's going to be people trying to take advantage of it. Don't label everybody that's doing a good thing as being an embezzler or taking and making a massive profit on what you have because of the situation, okay? Most of the time, it's actually really decent people trying to do really generous things. They just happen to be in a position where they can get it better and move it quicker. This is where I want you to be. This is what I want you to do. But you can only do that if you think first and then act. Think first and then act. If you don't do that, you're not going to help anybody. You're certainly not going to help yourself. Think first, then act. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to close out the show with What Would Happen If. Excuse me. Welcome back to the show. What Would Happen If is brought to you by DJR Enterprises. Great entertainment when you need it. Just telephone 470-554-2134 to get involved in the wonderful opportunity that is your next event. I believe Easter is right around the corner. That should be the next big thing that's coming up. No, I take that back. My mistake. It is St. Paddy's Day. St. Paddy's Day is coming up right around the corner. If you've got an event you want to go ahead and just and need music for or a great MC, call 470-554-2134 and we can go ahead and get your event really moving. Today's topic for What Would Happen If is you put it all together and you turn yourself around. Yes, that's what it's all about. And I know it sounds corny. I know it sounds cliche. It sounds like a song. It is basically the name of a song or part of a song. Yes, you know it as the Hokey Pokey. But, and it even sounds hokey. But it's so true. It's so true. If you take everything that I've been talking about this whole show, if you stop and think, if you put into action as a small business or a side hustle, if you go ahead and defend yourself in every way possible that you possibly can, if you take advantage of the war that's going on around you in any way that you can to help other people, you put it all together and you turn yourself around, and then yes, that's what it's all about. That's about taking everything that I've been talking about and making your own business. It's the business of life. It's the business of generosity. It's the business of helping other people. It's the business of social interaction. It's the business of everything. Literally, the business of everything. And if you can do this and you can turn yourself around and you can do everything that I've just described to you, you literally can become massively wealthy in a very short period of time. And you can do it in a way that people are loving you. You can do it in a way that people are really wanting to get involved in what you're doing. You can do it in a way that's going to attract so many investors. You just don't realize it. It doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but it can happen very, very quickly if you happen to know what you're doing. You happen to have a great idea of what you're going to do and how to execute it. And then you have great help helping you do the very thing that you're thinking of doing as well. You put it all together. You turn yourself around, and that is what it's all about. That is where to go. That is how you get rich. This is exactly what you do. I mean, some people say it's a dirty business, but somebody has to do it. Either way, if it needs to get done and you're the one that can do it, do it. Plain and simple. I mean, I heard once not too long ago that God, that universe, that the great spirit, whatever you want to go ahead and call your conscience, your deity, your way of doing things, life in general, period, does not send great ideas to one person. They send out a fantastic idea to hundreds and thousands of people. Why? Because they know that sooner or later, one person is going to act upon it. They know that sooner or later, 10 people are going to try to do something about it. They know that 100 people are going to think seriously about it, but that most people will do nothing. Let's take it the opposite way. God, the great spirit, the universe, whatever you want to go ahead and call it, sends out a blanket email to everybody in the universe. And we don't know how many other people are, or how many other beings, so to speak, is getting the exact same thing. We just know that we're receiving it on our level. So everybody on Earth gets the exact same email. 90% of the people go, oh, this is just spam. Delete. Let's throw it in the spam file. Let's file it with file it number 13. Let's just get rid of it because we've got more important things to do, such as putting food in our mouth because we're hungry. But then you got, let's limit it to about 10%. 10% of the people. Now, if there's 7 billion people in the world, on the face of the earth, 7 billion people, and yes, that includes babies, infants, and old people as well. But out of those 7 billion people, if we have 10% of that think about utilizing that fantastic idea, that means that 7 million people are thinking about this. 7 million people are thinking seriously about doing something with this idea. But they really don't do more than think. Out of those 7 million people, if we take the 10% of that, which brings it down to 1% of the whole global population, 7 million means that 700,000 people actually think seriously and try to do something about this. 700,000 people try to do something about this. but 7,000 actually do a great thing with this all over the world. You're never going to find, or almost never going to find, those 7,000 people all in Atlanta. You're never going to find them all in the United States. You're never going to find them all on the North American continent. But if they are spaced out around the world and they are divided equally, let's just divide them equally into the countries, okay? 7,000 people into basically 350 countries. And it doesn't matter if they're democratic or if they're despots or if they're kingdoms or whatever the case may be, okay? If they're divided equally, that pretty much puts you somewhere in the neighborhood. My math is spotty right now, so I can't go ahead and do this right off the bat. But I want to say that it's probably going to mean that there's about 500 people in every single country. 500 people in every single country that actually does this. Now, let's take the United States because it's nice and easily divided from there, okay? That out of those 50 states, just the 50 states, forget the territories, but just those 50 states, if you have 500 people in the United States doing this, that means that 10 people in every single state, 10 people are doing the exact same thing at that point. This comes up to a great thing. Out of those 10 people that are doing this in one state, you'll probably find 3 of them, maybe 2 of them, actually probably find 2 of them, maybe 3 of them, that are actually taking this idea and really running with the ball, and they're going to be just hammering it down and becoming the next huge box store, the next Amazon. They're going to be hammering this down and becoming the next Microsoft or Apple computer type thing. This is what I'm talking about. It's a very, very, very small portion of the people. But if you take everything that I've told you about and you put it all together and you get the ball rolling, you turn yourself around and you start moving with that idea and running with that idea, even if you don't succeed at what it is for whatever reason it happens to be. You've got a sales force of 1, you are selling to an audience of 2. You have a limited supply of 4 items. It's not going to work very well for you, okay? But if you have put yourself in a position where you can easily get certain resources and you can take those resources to the place that needs them the most, and you can go ahead and limit them to a point where it's still generous, but you have to say, I've run out for the moment. I will be back tomorrow. I've run out for the moment. I'll be back later today. Then you can go ahead and make this better and better and better. And you can go ahead and turn this into a thriving and a really massively great interest that can go ahead and expand immensely to whatever needs to get done. And like I said, that's what it's all about. That is literally what it's all about. If you can go ahead and do these things, then you can set yourself up for success. And you can have the first of God's great commands to Adam, which was go forth and prosper. And that is where I want to go ahead and leave you. You've been listening to Standing on the Edge. I want to give a shout out to my friends that are watching today. That, of course, is my lovely wife, Heather, my best friend, Lee, who's been watching, who supports me all the time, too. My other best friend, Shelly, and her family as well, that are doing a great job in the medical field. Don't forget, if you want to be part of this show, if you'd like to be a partial sponsor, just send me a text to 470-554-2134, or you can send me an email to joinmeattheedge@gmail.com. Join me at the edge, double T's, double E's, at the edge at gmail.com, and get the link from me for the GoFundMe page. $1 is all I'm asking. $1 to be a partial sponsor, and this helps get this content into your hands. Let me remind you, my next show is going to be next Friday, March 4th, once again at noon. But until then, I want you to remember to expand your own awareness. Expand your own awareness. Think of something every day to help you on your own path. And hopefully soon, I'll see you joining me on the edge. Have a great weekend.